Hi, seventh grade. Welcome back. Today we're going to continue looking at the Spanish conquest of the Aztecs. If you're interested, you can look at YouTube. There's a lot of videos that I wish I can show you, but I can't because of time. Today you are going to be working with this document. Um, it's several pages long, but it has a lot of pictures, and I do want you to read this document. There's going to be questions here. I'm going to delete these, but these will appear on your exit ticket. So today you have a video, you have a reading, and an exit ticket. Let me read this first couple paragraphs. Hernando Cortez was born in Europe in 1485, so about 7 years before Columbus discovered America. Of the many exciting options open to a young man of his time, he chose a job at sea. In 1504, he joined other Spanish explorers and traveled to Hispaniola. Now, he's from Spain. He's from Spain where the dot is. Hispaniola is this right here, Okay. In 1504, he joined other Spanish explorers and traveled to Hispaniola in the New World. Today, Hispaniola is known as Dominican Republic, and Haiti is off the coast of Mexico. So it's not Cuba. Cuba is the bigger island above it. Cortez already had big plans. Soon his plans began to come true when he was hired by the person in charge of Hispaniola, Governor Velasquez, to lead a mission into Mexico. You will see that he does have issues with Governor Velasquez. Governor Velasquez is from Cuba, and he asked Cortez to go explore and trade with the people of Mexico. He did not ask him to go conquer. Cortez started to assemble men, supplies, and weapons for his trip. It appeared that he had more in mind than just a voyage of discovery and trade. Governor Velasquez soon became doubtful of Cortez's plans and told Cortez that he was no longer in charge of the trip to Mexico. Cortez went right ahead with his plans anyway. In fact, he left as fast as possible before the governor could have him stopped. So yeah, he's defiant, right? He wants to do what he wants to do. He's a man of his own. He wants to do what he wants to do. He sailed to the coast of Mexico. Once on land, he began to make deals with native tribes there. These tribes were unhappy with the way the Aztecs treated them. They also did not like to pay taxes to the Aztecs, mainly the tribe known as the Tlaxcalans. So Cortez was able to exploit the relationship between the native tribes against the Aztecs. He was able to say, well, join us, we'll help you. And the Tlaxcalans obviously went with it. Cortez found many people who were willing to join his trip and who were willing to help him. He found people who could act as translators too. On his way to Tenochtitlan, Cortez met a woman by the name of Doña Marina. History knows her as La Malinche. She became Cortez's translator, partner, and mother of his child. Here you have a picture. Cortez also began to hear rumors that he had heard before. Rumors that said the Native Americans in Mexico had gold, lots of gold. He learned that it was the Aztecs who lived further inland, who were known for their beautiful object crafted from gold. He learned too that their empire was centered in the capital city of Tenochtitlan. Cortez, with the help of his Native American's friend, set off for the Aztec capital. So you're going to continue reading this. You have one, two, 2.5 pages. Okay? Pay close attention to the images. Let's watch this video together. I'll stop it once in a while. So this is Mexico City. This is Mexico City, and this is where the Aztec capital was located at one point. So it looks just like a regular city. This is one of the older cathedrals in Mexico, created by the Spanish, because this is a Christian church, and the Spanish that was one of the goals of the Spanish to spread Christianity. It's called colonial because it's from the colonial period.
Hello everyone, this is Pierre, and today I want to share with you a story that really amazed me. It is the story of the conquest of Mexico by Hernán Cortés in the 16th century.
So 16th century is the 1500s. He conquered the Aztec Empire, I think, in 1521.
It's a pretty amazing subject because apart from the violence that took place, it shows the incredible fate of a man defying all odds to pursue his goal. A man born in rural Europe took over a whole empire almost on his own. If that's not destiny, I don't know what is.
This is the flag of Spain. This is where Cortez is from.
Hernan Cortes was born into a lesser nobility family in 1485 during the golden age of royal Spain. In this kingdom, at the time Cortes was 7 years old, an explorer named Christopher Columbus had achieved something that nobody believed could be done, discovering land to the west of Europe. As little Hernan grew up, it appeared obvious that he was more attracted by adventure than by his law studies, and by the age of 20, he left Spain for the young Spanish colonies. After participating to the conquest of the island of Cuba with a Spanish expedition, he received a large property and enough slaves to live comfortably until the end of his life.
But that wasn't going to be enough, right? For Cortez is a little more hungry for power and wealth. He wants more.
But this is exactly where his destiny would reveal. Rumors of land to the west with plenty of gold had been around for a few years in Cuba. Cortes decided to take his chance. He sold
So this is Cuba here. Hispaniola is at the bottom here.
everything he had, led his wife, and prepared for an expedition. Cortes left Cuba with 11 ships, 900 men, a few cannons, 32 horses, and set foot during spring of 1519 in Veracruz, where the Spanish set their base camp in the middle of a pristine jungle.
So we don't really know exactly how many men he had, but he did have under 1,000 men. But he did have weapons. He had some horses. He had cannons. He had probably some rifles and metal weapons.
Not so pristine, the conquistadors quickly realized that many different peoples lived there, encountering friendly or hostile groups of natives, mostly Mayans. Cortes
Mayan was a civilization that was in existence before the Aztecs.
quickly decided to reach the great capital everybody was talking about, the city of gold, Tenochtitlan. He assembled his men and horses, burned his own ships to make sure his men were committed, and he began his march inside the jungle.
It's actually interesting. So some of his soldiers wanted to leave, but so he burned his ships and they couldn't leave.
He first met the kingdom of Tlaxcala. After a short battle, the 500 Spanish were way superior, with their horses and their weapons of thunder. After understanding that the Tlaxcala people were enemies to the Aztec Empire, Cortes agreed to form an alliance with them and could enlarge his expedition with 2,000 Tlaxcala men eager to be set free from the Aztec rule.
This is important. So he first fights the Tlaxcalans, but eventually they realize that they're both having the same enemy, the Aztecs. And the reason why the Tlaxcalans dislike the Aztecs is because the Tlaxcalans are charged taxes, sometimes sacrificed by the Aztecs. Look how pretty this is.
Aztec diplomats met Cortes and proposed to offer a large quantity of gold on a regular basis if he accepted not to continue his march. Cortes refused and said he would pay tribute in person to the emperor in Tenochtitlan. The Spanish finally reached the Aztec city of Cholula. They were made a terrific welcome and were offered food and water and a place to rest. But before the night came, the conquistadors received a message from an old woman. The emperor's army was nearby and ready to attack the Spanish in their sleep.
Cholula is a city controlled by the Aztecs. And this is a message that Cortez receives that he doesn't like, obviously, right? That says that they're going to be killed in their sleep.
Unsure, but knowing the risks were very high, the Spanish decided to prepare for a preemptive attack. Starting with the nobles, the Spanish killed between 3 and 6,000 people in a few hours, and they destroyed most of the city. Hernan Cortes marched to Tenochtitlan. When they arrived, the Spanish had not seen a more beautiful city than Tenochtitlan. They wrote letters to the continent full of admiration for a gigantic, clean, organized city, and most of all, full of gold.
So they are in awe. There's letters that Cortez sends the King of England, of Spain, that shows admiration for the city of Tenochtitlan.
At that time, the Aztecs had every reason to be skeptical about the Spanish. They had horses, they had firearms, they claimed to be gods, and the emperor was very unsure about how to deal with them. So, to make sure they would not harm them, the Aztecs preferred to open the gates of the city and of the imperial palace. The 500 Spanish were allowed to stay there and were even granted a chapelle. There,
I don't know what Chappelle is, but I'm sure it sounds fancy.
in the middle of a country home to millions of people, a few hundred Spanish explorers and soldiers were trying to make up a plan to take over an empire. The plan became quickly necessary. Hernan Cortes just had received news that an independent Mayan kingdom had attacked and destroyed the Spanish camp of Veracruz. They had very little time before the emperor realized they were not gods. The first solution that came to their mind was to take the emperor as a hostage, waiting to find a way out of Tenochtitlan. Hernan Cortes asked for a hearing to the emperor. That's where he made a signal, telling his men to kill the emperor's bodyguards, detaining him as a hostage.
So getting the emperor as a hostage is probably one of the most important things that could happen. Um, without the emperor, the Aztec military can't do anything. They need the emperor's permission, and if Cortes controls the emperor, Cortes controls the empire.
After a few weeks, the anger in the Aztec population was growing, and the Spanish felt it. Once again, they opted for another preemptive strike. During an Aztec celebration at the center of the Templo Mayor, the Spanish blocked the exit and began a giant bloodbath. Most of the important generals, priests, and officials were killed that night in the slaughter of 6,000 people. Quickly recovering from the hit, the Aztecs surrounded the imperial palace and began the siege. In the midst of the confusion, the emperor was even killed by the Aztec crowd. Inside the palace, the morale was low. They were trapped, they had very little chances to survive. Cortes and the Spanish tried to figure out a way out of the city. In the middle of the night, Cortes assembled his troops in wooden bridges they had made and led a final escape. Quickly, the Aztec realized their move, and soon all the city was awake, fighting to destroy them. Under the rain, the city was awake, fighting to destroy them. Under the rain, and after a heavy fighting, Hernan Cortes managed to make his way out with most of his officers, but almost two-thirds of the remaining Spanish troop was killed that night.
So there's this back and forth between the Aztecs attacking, the Spanish attacking, the Aztecs attacking, the Spanish attacking. But we know how this story is going to end.
On the firm ground, the ones that managed to get out of the city had to continue fighting in the direction of the territory of their local allies of Tlaxcala.
So the Tlaxcalans do help the Aztecs, do help the Spanish escape, including Cortes, but they will come back.
After 1 week of exhausting harassment by the new emperor's troops, the Spanish were caught in the valley of Atumba. The 500 Spanish had no choice but to fight against 40,000 Aztec warriors. The fight began pretty even. The muskets of the Spanish managed to make up for the numerical disadvantage. Many times the Aztec lines broke, but the imperial army was so huge it was progressively gaining an edge, closing on to the Spanish.
So remember, the Spanish have a lot of allies, Native American allies, that are helping them defeat the Aztecs because they don't want to be ruled by the Aztecs anymore.
When the situation seemed desperate, Hernan Cortes decided to play his last card. He chose 5 of his best cavalry lieutenants and prepared to challenge the Mexica's top officers. To the Spanish rallying cry of Santiago, the 6 men executed the first cavalry charge the Aztecs had ever seen. Taking advantage of the bewilderment of their enemies, Juan de Salamanca, one of the 6 cavaliers, killed the Aztec general and robbed the imperial flag. That was the end of the battle and sealed a desperate victory for the Spanish. They could return to the Tlaxcala kingdom safely while they rest and recovered their strength. With the reinforcement of Spanish troops from Cuba, Cortes managed to win the siege of Tenochtitlan in 75 days, destroying every single building in the process.
One thing that they did was also they closed the bridges. The Spanish closed the bridges, so no material can come into the city. And there was a huge outbreak of smallpox that killed the majority of soldiers in Tenochtitlan. So it wasn't just European weapons. It wasn't just that the Europeans were better at fighting. It was a combination of many things. It was mistakes done by the Aztecs by not destroying the Aztecs, the Spanish when they could. It was disease, it was weapons, it was also alliances. So again, underestimating the enemy hurt the Aztecs really bad. The diseases they couldn't control that. The alliances that the Aztecs that the Europeans made, that the Spanish made with the people that disliked the Aztecs also hurt. So it was a combination of many different things. It wasn't just one or two.
He was the new Emperor of Mexico. And this is how ends the story of Hernan Cortes, one of the most amazing stories I have ever heard of. A story where all the rational elements.
I'll show you guys a little bit of this one too, because that one was kind of.
The Spanish discovery of the New World by Christopher Columbus led to the establishment of permanent European settlements. And by the early 16th century, Spain controlled the entire continental shore of the Caribbean Sea, including Cuba and Hispaniola. In 1518, the Spanish governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez de Cuellar, commissioned Hernán Cortés to make contact with the natives in Mexico. But it became clear that Cortés was arming and provisioning for an expedition of conquest. Velázquez tried to replace Cortés, but his replacement was intercepted and killed. Cortés and a few hundred men set sail for Mexico in an act of open mutiny. Central Mexico at that time was dominated by the Aztec Empire, a confederation of city-states that had united.
But remember, some of these people that live here have to pay taxes to the Aztecs, to the capital, to Tenochtitlan, and some of these people aren't happy with that. So when they see a European that's trying to take over the Aztec capital, they're like, "Yeah, let's go."
Expanded over the past century. They were surrounded by various other states like the Tarascan, Tlaxcala, and Mixtec, while most of southern Mexico was controlled by the Maya. Cortés soon landed on the island of Cozumel, where he met with a white shipwreck survivor, a Franciscan priest, who served as his translator. They captured the capital of the small Mayan state, Potonchan, and were awarded with women, one of whom, La Melinche, who became Cortés's mistress and translator. Cortés then landed on the coast of Veracruz in April and created a new settlement. As an elected official of the new town council, he reported directly to the Spanish crown, which allowed him to avoid prosecution for defying Velázquez's orders. The Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II agreed to send representatives to meet with Cortés, but refused to meet with him personally. Cortés scuttled his own fleet to avoid his men escaping.
Remember this when he burns his own ship so that his men wouldn't escape.
Formed an alliance with the local Totonac chief and marched inland to the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, in August. Although they met some resistance from the Otomi and Tlaxcalans, they decided to unite against their common enemy, the Aztecs. Together they continued on to the holy Aztec city of Cholula, which they took without any resistance. But Cortés got word of a plot to murder the Spanish in their sleep, so he killed over 3,000 people and burned the city to the ground. Fearing a similar fate, Moctezuma chose the path of diplomacy and invited the conquistadors to visit the capital. November 8, 1519, Cortés and his men arrived at Tenochtitlan, and according to Cortés, Moctezuma pledged his loyalty to the King of Spain.
Again, can we trust Cortez and what he says? Can we say yes, that's what Montezuma did? We don't really know.
However, this is unlikely because when Cortes planned to place an image of the Virgin Mary and a cross at the top of their main temple pyramid, Moctezuma responded by killing 7 Spaniards. Cortes quickly arrested Moctezuma, who did not resist because he feared an open rebellion in the city would allow the Spanish to install another prince as emperor. Meanwhile, Governor Velázquez sent Pánfilo de Narváez to Mexico with orders to capture Cortes for violating his orders. Cortes quickly defeated this force in April 1520. However, when he returned to Tenochtitlan, he found the city was in open rebellion after his men had massacred Aztec nobility in the Great Temple. He ordered Moctezuma to speak to his people, but they threw stones at him instead. Moctezuma either died from his injuries or was killed by the Spanish before they fled the city. They lost many men during the hurried retreat, but despite being heavily outnumbered, were able to defeat the pursuing army led by the new emperor Cuitláhuac in July 1520 at Otumba. The Tlaxcala gave the surviving Spanish refuge, while a smallpox epidemic killed many Aztecs, including Cuitláhuac. So the Spanish regrouped, built boats, and with fresh reinforcements and tens of thousands of Tlaxcala allies, marched on the capital again. They arrived at the city in May 1521, blocked the causeways leading into the city, captured their water
So the causes are these.
supplies at Chapultepec, and patrolled the shores to prevent supplies being ferried in. They broke into the city and
So they starved the city. Um, uh, they took the water supply, they took the food supply, and there was an outbreak of smallpox. So
August. The new emperor Cuauhtemoc was caught trying to escape, and the Aztecs surrendered. The city was destroyed, and the surviving Aztec people were cast out, forbidden to live in the ashes of their former city. On the site, Cortes began to build the foundations of what would become Mexico City. Neighboring states like the Tarascan submitted to Spanish rule. It would take the Spanish another 170 years to finally end the resistance in Mesoamerica and conquer the Maya in the Yucatan Peninsula. Disease would prove to be their strongest ally, with 3 separate epidemics that may have killed as much as 75% of the indigenous population. We'd like to thank Jab.
okay, guys, peace out.